Let's keep it down. Camera's rolling. I don't want to have to scream over the camera. Okay, when we last spoke, we discussed something called energy pyramids. Okay, easy stuff. Easy stuff. Actually, I'll show you the picture. Energy pyramids. You can actually use a pyramid to represent how energy flows in an ecosystem. But look, it tapers. That's important. Look at where the producers are at. They are at the base. Actually, don't even look at the bottom one yet. The producers, primary producers, are at the base of this energy pyramid because they are the ones, the oh so important ones, that can harvest 100% of the energy by photosynthesis for everybody else to use. They get the process going. They're the starters. The primary producers. That's why there's 100% there. Now here's the kind of really unfortunate thing. As you move up into a different, what we're going to call trophic level. Okay, so this is kind of a word worth mentioning. Something called a trophic level. It's a strange word, and it's just the word that's used to represent the organisms at a certain level of a food chain. So your producers would be one trophic level. The ones above it, the first level consumers, would be another trophic level. That's just, just a fancy word they use. As you move up, look at this. It's not 100% anymore. It's only 10% above it. This is what that means. That means that first level consumers, whoever they may be, first level consumers, whether it's a deer, you guys had some of that in your posters, a deer or any other first level consumer, out of that 100% that used to be around, they only have access to 10% of that. And my first thought was, well, where'd the rest of it go? You can't just create or destroy energy. Where did it go? You can see off to the side here, they have these little heat arrows. It takes a lot of energy just to maintain yourself as an organism. In other words, let's look at those producers. Yeah, sure, they're capable of supplying 100% of the energy for everybody else, but some of that energy has to go for maintaining themselves. Their cells need to divide. Those plants need to generate ATP and move, and they need to transport food and transport water through them. In other words, it takes a lot of energy to be a living organism. That's why only a really small part gets passed on, available to the guys above them, to the first level consumers. This is something, I kind of wrote that same overhead. So this is nothing new. You don't have to copy this down. No, actually, I do want you to copy this down. Okay, but it's exactly what you saw on the other page. Energy pyramid. They show how much energy is available at each trophic level. T-R-O-P-H-I-C level. And again, this pyramid shows exactly what you saw on the other page. The producers are at the bottom, 100% of the energy. The primary consumers, the ones that eat them, they're only going to have access to 10% of that energy. The other 90% went into maintaining the producers, so they're not going to get it. The primary consumers aren't going to get it. It's stuck with the producers. As you work your way up, only 10% gets passed on. So look at the very top. Tertiary consumers have access to very little energy. Very little of the original energy. So you're like, who cares? But this is what that means. What this means is as you work your way up the pyramid, the ecosystem can only support lower numbers, less numbers of organisms. Oops, I know that's kind of hard to read. Less numbers of organisms. In other words, on Earth, there are a lot of producers. If you would count up the number of producers on Earth, it would be a huge number. If you were to count the number of primary consumers on Earth, that number would be small. If you would count up the number of secondary consumers on Earth, that number would be smaller yet. In other words, you get less and less sheer number of organisms as you move up the trophic levels because there's not enough energy available for them to use. So they can't have a bunch of numbers. Biomass. Here's another word. Not only do you have lower numbers of organisms, your overall biomass numbers are lower as you go up the pyramid as well. Biomass. Okay, look at the word though. Mass. If I would tell you guys to go take the mass of something, you should know what to do. You should know that you would probably go over to a scale and give me some answer in what unit? Grams. Okay. Biomass. So obviously this has to do with probably figuring out the mass of something biological. That's exactly what it is. If I was able to take all the producers on Earth and plop them on a scale, find out how many grams they would be, it'd be a lot of grams. If I would do that same thing to the primary consumers, the numbers would be lower, less biomass. Okay, kind of goes along with numbers of organisms, but it's a little different. You know, not only are the number of organisms going down as you go up, but the actual mass amount of matter these people take up is different. Okay. By the way, 10% rule. Actually, this is just kind of reinstating what I just said. The 10% rule. As you move up the pyramid, less number of organisms can be supported. Just talks about that. Biomass, the amount of living tissue in a trophic level. And remember, we also said as you go up the pyramid, you get less biomass. So it's simple. This is actually not meant to be very, very difficult stuff, so that's the good news. All right, moving along. I know, I'm waiting. No, I want to show you guys kind of a fun fact. Hold on, I think I saved it.
Damon gave us a fun fact.
I did.
Chapter's full of fun facts today.
I did a fun fact also.
I know.
Actually, somebody in the other class asked this question because this whole concept, not to get kind of all philosophical, but there are some really radical vegans and vegetarians out there who become vegan and vegetarian. They stay away from like all animal products because of this whole energy deal. Hold on. I can't do two things at once. Let me get the one overhead I want to show you. Yeah. In other words, some people become vegans and vegetarians because it's actually less efficient. It's less efficient for an ecosystem if you feed at higher trophic levels for the reasons I just got done talking about. So they say to themselves, okay, well, it's much more efficient for me to eat all plant-based material because they have 100% of the energy. Energy isn't being wasted. So somebody in the other class said, really? Because, and this is what they said, and it makes perfect sense. They're like, but that doesn't make sense because I thought, like, if you would eat, you know, a pound of meat or eat a pound of plant-based material, you're like, don't you get a whole lot more energy out of the cow than you would the plant-based material? Well, yeah, but here's what I mean. So that's not what I'm saying. I like this little part. Look at the bottom part here. The top part just says exactly what I was just already telling you about. 10% always gets passed on. I'm going to read it out loud because it's hard to read. Energy is used much more efficiently if humans eat plants on the first trophic level instead of meat, the second trophic level. A given area of farmland can support more people if the crops are fed directly to the people rather than to livestock that the people then eat. Here's what this is saying. This is just saying that if you had an acre of farm ground, you could feed a lot of people. But if you had an acre of farm ground, basically you would probably not be able to, you'd have to use a lot of that to feed a cow or something, and then it's much more inefficient than for the person to eat the cow who had to eat all that farmland. In other words, I'm not explaining this well. What they do some calculations, but this is what it all comes down to. This is the example they use. If you had an acre and a half of corn, okay, you'd be able to feed 10 people, could be supported on an acre and a half of corn. But if those people ate meat, that acre and a half of corn would only be able to provide nourishment for a cow in order to feed only one person, whereas 10 people could have been fed off from the plant-based material. I don't know. It's kind of weird. In other words, it's much more efficient to feed at a lower trophic level, although, that's easier said than done when all you're doing is eating plants all day. So. Oh, we got in the other conversation in the other class about corn, because everybody's corn. Because corn's not a vegetable, guys.
Bro, I refuse to change my other side for plant-based corn.
It's funny because corn, I think somebody in the other class said, well, what is corn, by the way? You guys should know this.
Seeds of a
Feed.
crop.
It's like a grain, okay? So it's technically not a
It's
vegetable.
good.
I mean, that's why everyone's like,
It's a way to
but...
heat your house.
It's a way to raise them up.
All right, let's see if we can plug on a little further. All right, matter and energy. Boy, it sounds like something from last year, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, physical science. But you need to know the difference between these two words in terms of biology as well. By the way, matter. When I think of the word matter, you could think of the definition, anything that has mass and takes up space. But really, when it comes down to it, if something is made up of one or more atoms, it's considered matter. Energy is not made up of matter. Energy is energy. Okay, so that's different. Here's what you have to know as far as biology. So I'm not going to go into major details about the definitions, but as far as this class, matter can be recycled, I guess you can kind of say, in an ecosystem. Here's what I mean by that. Let me give you an example. Matter can be recycled in an ecosystem, or it can cycle in an ecosystem. For example, carbon. Carbon is an atom. Carbon can actually take different forms depending on if it's in the air, if it's in the land, if it's in a rock, if it's in an organism. It moves, okay? And it moves places all the time. Energy is kind of a one-way ticket. Energy can't really be recycled. All right, where's that little graph? I like this picture. It sums up what I just kind of said in a picture
Of
form.
energy.
Yeah. Notice how energy is taking a one-way trip. Okay, so that's not necessarily bad. It's just different from matter, which is in the red, which is kind of keeps cycling itself in an environment all the time. That's what it's trying to show you, that matter can recycle itself in an environment. Energy kind of goes one way. Which leads me to this word. Well, not really so much of a word. What does that mean to you? Chomps.
I feel like it's a noun that
Yeah, it is. It's kind of one of those like, okay, I need to know this word.
Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen.
nitrogen.
That's exactly what it is.
phosphate.
Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur. Why would these be important? By the way, they're hanging from my wall or ceiling.
No, they're not.
Those are the 6
Oh,
atoms
they're
that are hanging from my ceiling over there. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur. Okay. Why in the world would I take the time to make those? It took me like about a week over the summer, a long time ago, to make those things with like fishing wire or something. They're kind of falling apart though. Okay. I remember I have all the protons, neutrons, and electrons in them. Basically, these are the atoms that make up 90-some% of living organisms. In other words, you guys, if you were able to take a sample of yourself, you are pretty much just one of 6 atoms. Isn't that amazing? Only 6 atoms, for the most part, make you up. All living organisms. Okay. We are just big bags of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, and salt. So, yep, we are just chons. So, okay, here's when it comes down to it. You guys have heard about the cycles. In fact, I know ever since grade school you've seen these. And I just want to show you and remind you about some of the basic cycles out there. Now, what all these have in common is the fact that you are taking atoms and you are moving them into different forms. This is by far the simplest one, the water cycle. Okay, the words you need to be familiar with for this cycle and to understand it are words like condensation, evaporation, precipitation,
Diffusion.
that one's not directly related. We'll leave that one out.
That word means? No.
There's other one. Melting. I mean, these are all basic words, guys. So I want you to understand those words are very much part of the water cycle. And that's what this picture is showing. Okay, you have from the oceans to the atmosphere, you have evaporation taking place, going from liquid to a gas. From the atmosphere to the oceans, you have condensation taking place. It's going from a gas to a liquid. How does that happen? Usually through precipitation, which hopefully we'll get here in the next couple of days. Okay, in the form of snow. Okay? In the form of snow, we will be getting precipitation. Groundwater. People like to just think about just the air and water, like bodies of water having water, but keep in mind, there is a lot of water that is kind of held up in the soil itself.
Is that why you have wells?
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right, around here. Yep. So water cycle, that's the easiest. I want to show you something a little more complicated, and then I'm probably going to end for the day because I'm running out of time. Whoa. Okay. It looks scary.
It is.
It looks scary. Shh. Carbon. Shh, guys. No, quiet. Carbon. First of all, you got to add some stuff to this. I'm not done. I'm writing. Bring the notebooks out. Come on, people. Let me remind you why you even care about carbon. Way back in the beginning of the year, we talked about these 4 types of macromolecules that are found in living organisms. You should know what each of these are. Whoops. Nucleic acids. You should know what each of these are. You got your carbohydrates, primary energy source. You got your proteins. Remember, we're big bags of proteins. You got your lipids, which is a fancy word for fat. And you've got your nucleic acids, which is just a fancy word for your DNA or RNA. These major macromolecules pretty much make us up.
Why do they have to make those stupid names though?
These cycle things?
Why can't they just say fat?
Oh, why they... I don't know. They just...
They have to have a job, so I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. All of these 4 words I just wrote down are major macromolecules that make you up, and pretty much all of them have carbon as one of the key ingredients. So it makes sense that we should probably figure out how carbon is traced in an environment, since it's basically the majority about what we're made up of. All right, scary looking. You got a ton of arrows. All the arrows are different colors. All the different colors represents different ways that this carbon is moved around. Let me give you an example. Let's focus on the purple area, purple arrows over here. It's a cycle. Carbon dioxide is in our atmosphere, in the air. That goes from the air into actual solid-based form known as sugar for the process of photosynthesis, okay? So you can kind of look at this arrow and say, you know what? The fact it's going from the CO2 into your organisms is photosynthesis. And that's what they talk about here. It's just too little. Photosynthesis. What's the opposite of photosynthesis, guys? We just talked about that earlier. Cell respiration is going to do the same thing and just put it the other way. Okay? You got these yellow arrows. There's another word that's associated with this cycle, fossil fuels. You guys know what fossil fuels are, coal, oil, gas. Well, the yellow arrows mean humans are doing it. The yellow arrows are indicating the fact that fossil fuels are being burned and putting that CO2 back into the atmosphere. That's why the arrows are pointing up. Okay. Yeah, I guess that could be there too. Okay. All right. Red arrows. Some of that CO2 in the atmosphere actually gets dissolved into the oceans. Then some gets back into rainwater. That's all that means. The green arrows basically are showing you that carbon can actually be released, carbon dioxide in the form of carbon dioxide, from volcanoes. Believe it or not, volcanoes release a lot of junk, one of which is carbon dioxide. So that's one of the ways carbon dioxide gets put back into the air as well. Again, guys, it's important to be able to trace an atom like carbon through the environment. And this is, understanding how to read these is kind of crucial. So, the carbon cycle, this is one of the more complicated ones. So. Alright guys, I'm done for the day.
Can I leave so I can make the bus?
Yeah.
Well, that's not matter.
Can't make the bus.
Sorry guys.
I'm sorry.